bonus podcast action for you guys after the podcast that I put out yesterday talking about what the Minnesota Vikings can learn from Super Bowl 54. Some of the comments talked about how, well, the Vikings should have learned that the offensive line is not going to be stout 100% of the time, in which case we need a quarterback that can get outside the pocket and extend plays. And I agree. I don't disagree with that at all, in which case some of you also mentioned that the Vikings should trade up and draft Tua Tagovailoa at some point. I'm going to get his last name right. Probably not today. If you're all in, if you're a Vikings fan and you're all in on drafting Tua, trading up and drafting Tua, that also means you're done with Kirk Cousins. I don't disagree with that at all. I do think, however, that the Vikings can win with Kirk Cousins as their quarterback. It's just this man needs everything to go right for him. And in Kirk Cousins' defense, he did show you that he can at least win a playoff game. He did that at the Superdome against New Orleans in the wild card round before losing to the Niners in the divisional round. So at this point in time, gun to the head, I would not sign Kirk Cousins to an extension, even though I think the Vikings can win with him. It's just he still has a lot more to prove as a franchise quarterback. Now, also, full disclosure, I have my own reservations about Tua. I think, and I'm talking about a healthy Tua, because he's one of those college quarterbacks where it's just going to the next level. I'll believe it when I see it. And also, take that aside, this man is coming into the league with serious question marks about his durability. So take that aside. He's going to be fully healthy, and he's going to be a fantastic franchise quarterback if you believe that. Let's say that's what Tua is going to end up being, and let's come up with some potential trade packages for Tua, in which case the Minnesota Vikings, they're going to have to go from anywhere from the second pick to the third pick or the fourth pick, because right now they're at 25. So number one, Joe Burrow, he's going to go to Cincinnati, and you have to get ahead of the Miami Dolphins at number 5, because if he falls to number 5, the Miami Dolphins, they will draft Tua. So you have to get to 2, 3, or 4, the Giants, Skins, or the Lions pick. So let's go ahead and run through some potential trade packages for the Minnesota Vikings to jump up from number 25. Obviously, you're going to look at this year's first-round draft pick. I would say next year's third-round draft pick, and I would start with that and add a player, starting with Anthony Barr. For some reason, everybody thinks that Anthony Barr is hot shit, and I really don't mean to just destroy this dude every other podcast, but he's a big name, and he's counting $12.5 million against the cap next year, which is absolutely ridiculous. He's one of the most overrated players in the league, the most overrated player in the history of the Minnesota Vikings franchise. I would start with that. So this year's first, next year's third, and Anthony Barr. If that gets it done for the Giants, the Skins, or the Lions, I'm good with that. And I know traditionally you're not supposed to trade within the division, so the Detroit Lions. But hey, you can have him. Here's Anthony Barr on the silver platter. Good luck with that. If that doesn't work, I would then go to option B, which is this year's first and Dalvin Cook, because assuming that you're trying to go for Tua, if you're trying to trade up to draft Tua, then that means you're done with Kirk Cousins as the Minnesota Vikings organization, in which case I like Dalvin Cook. I hope that they can keep him. But Kirk Cousins needs Dalvin Cook in order to be successful. Whereas if you get a mobile quarterback that can get outside the pocket, such as Tua, he doesn't necessarily need Dalvin Cook like Kirk Cousins would need him. So, and Dalvin Cook has not shown enough to prove that he can stay durable for an entire season. And if he's going to pull off some Melvin Gordon crap this year, or at least in 2020, like Melvin Gordon did in 2019, whereas I won $13, $14, $15 million a year, then nah, man, I'm super good with that. I give Dalvin Cook I guess the most that I would give Dalvin Cook on a per year basis is about $10 million. Anything north of that, I'm super good with it. So moving on from Dalvin Cook, this year's first round draft pick, number 25, and Dalvin Cook. If that doesn't get it done, because I've seen this float around, but I don't think I've seen this in the comment section at all, but I've seen this on Twitter over the last few days, going back into last weekend. Oh, the Minnesota Vikings, they should look into trading Stephon Diggs. Let me tell you something right now. If the Minnesota Vikings trade away Stephon Diggs, Rick Spielman can get the fuck out of Minnesota. He can leave. I will help him pack, because You're talking about one of the best receivers in the league. He's still super young. He's in his prime. And compared to the production that he puts up, you're getting him at a great rate. And we're talking about he's coming off one of his best seasons. By the way, the questions surrounding Stefon Diggs about whether he could be a true number one receiver, that has been answered, especially with Adam Thielen being out for half the year. This man he's coming off one of his best seasons. I would say his second best season, even though, yes, in a vacuum, compared to the other receivers in the league, he was great. But I would say this was a down year for Stefon Diggs, despite the huge production that he put up in 2019. When you talk about fumbles, drop passes, he just wasn't as sharp as we're used to seeing as Minnesota Vikings fans. But if you trade away, if you're going to trade away a receiver, I would look at Adam Thielen. He's getting up there in age, even though he came off an injury-prone year. I think he can bounce back, but if you're looking at a receiver, I would trade away Adam Thielen before I trade away Stefon Diggs. But no, hell no, I don't want to hear a damn thing about trading away Stefon Diggs. Have you lost your mind? Get the fuck out of here, bro. But anyway, now the big fish or the big elephant in the room now goes to, if you're going to draft a quarterback, what are you going to do with Kirk Cousins? Well, two options. You can let him play out this year and go off into the sunset in 2021 to be an unrestricted free agent where he can sign wherever. Or personally, I would trade him and get some value for him. Well, he's got a no trade clause. Okay, fine. The way that you can work your way around that and be able to trade Kirk Cousins, I call it legal blackmail. As in this, say I'm Rick Spielman or I'm Mike Zimmer. I call in Kirk Cousins to my office. I say, hey, Kirk, come on in. Sit down. Take a seat. Here's what we're thinking about doing. We would like to trade you to such and such team. And let's say he says, no, I don't want to go. I want to be a Minnesota Viking for life. I love this place in Skull Vikings. How's the fight song go? Skull Vikings, let's win this game. Skull Vikings, honor your name. He says all that stuff. Okay, fine. What I would say to Kirk Cousins at that point is, listen, man, if you don't agree to waive your no trade clause, we are going to bench you in favor of Tua's probably not going to be healthy to start the year. So let's say we bring in Trevor Siemian. We're going to start Sean Mannion. I don't give a damn. We are going to bench you in favor of some other quarterback in the league. Pick a name out of a hat. It doesn't matter. Or you can go ahead and waive your no trade clause and go ahead and accept the trade wherever it is. And maybe out of these 5 teams, you can say, okay, this is where I want to go, and we'll send you there. Because you got to remember, the leverage would be for the Vikings because Kirk Cousins can't afford to get benched the year in a contract year. He still has a lot to prove because even if he doesn't come back to Minnesota, he's auditioning for the other 31 teams in the league. So that's my solution to that. That is I guess this is the emergency podcast, just top of the dome for all the folks out there saying, let's trade up for Tua. I have my reservations about him, but I just wanted to run through a couple of scenarios just in case the Vikings were to do it. And also, let's say the Giants, Skins, or Lions, they run up the ante and say, we want all these draft picks. Normally, I would say that it's too rich for the Vikings' blood. But Rick Spielman right now, at this point in time where he still has a lot to prove, if he's going to get a contract extension, be the long-term GM, he's not trying to get fired. This is a desperate man right now. He wants to prove that he can right the ship for the Minnesota Vikings. In which case, if you're on the hot seat as a GM or a coach, whatever it is, desperate people do desperate things. So I would say that Rick Spielman, normally he wouldn't do it, but right now, I think he would. So those are the scenarios that I would run through to draft up and take or trade up and draft Tua. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. We normally do this during the off season, once a week, Mediocre Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Randy. Check me out on Twitter at realistic_Randy, Facebook at Realistic Randy. We'll see you next week. Bye.